Hello everyone and welcome to today's class. My name is Daniel Shonuga. I am a software developer and an instructor at Alebian Solutions, where we teach and train individuals to upskill themselves in tech. And we take web development, mobile development, and even data science as well. So in today's class, we are going to be looking at Introduction to CSS, which is our very first video in this CSS training series. So firstly, what is CSS? Right, so CSS, it stands for Cascading Style Sheet, and it allows you to create rules that specify how the content of an element should appear on your web page. So for example, let's say you have your background, right, on your HTML, and you would like the color to become red. So changing that color of the background to red is what CSS takes care of. Or also, for example, let's say we have a font and it currently uses a Times New Roman font, right? And you want to change the font to just look like something else. That is also the work of CSS. So let's look at the anatomy of CSS. So the anatomy of CSS is broken down into two major sections. The first is the selector and the other one is the declaration. So the selector is basically the element which you are trying to style, the element in your HTML document which you're trying to style, whether it is a paragraph or it is an heading or it is even a list, right? That is the selector that you're trying to style in particular. So, and then the declaration is what exactly you're trying to style. What is the thing you're trying to do? So the declaration consists of the property and the value. So the property is what you're trying to do, and the value is what that thing is going to do, right? So let's look at this. For example, we have the font family and then we have Arial. So presently, what this is doing is that it is taking the paragraph tag and giving it a font family of Arial. You could change the Arial to become any font that is present on your system. Note, the font must be present on your system in order for it to work. And if it is not present on your system and you're trying to use a font that is probably somewhere, you're trying to use a Google font that Google has created, you can actually, there's a way you can do that, and you will learn more about that in the coming videos, right? So but for now, let's just focus on using fonts that are based on our system. So there are three ways of applying our CSS to our HTML tags. So the first way is the inline CSS, and the next one is the internal, and the third is the external. So let's look at how we work with inline CSS, right? So the inline CSS is done by using the style attribute in our HTML tag, right? So we use the style attribute in our HTML tag this way by placing the style color red inside our HTML tag. So let's look at this in our coding extension and see how that works. So alright, so I have this here. I've already written this down, but let me just clear it out just for us to actually write it by ourselves. So how inline CSS works with the word inline, it's just the word inline means it is within a line. So we write the style like this, and we'll do color. Let's go to blue. Let's go with blue this time, right? So it's got to blue, and then let's just load this on our browser and see how that looks like. I'm going to be opening my browser, and then I can just refresh this page. I can see this is the H1 that I just styled down, and I set the color to become blue. So right, that is inline CSS, and styling is basically defining what you want your elements to look like. So I hope that makes sense. So that's the inline CSS, and the next one we're looking at is our internal CSS, and this is done by using a style tag in the head section, and this is how it is represented. So you create a tag called style, and then we define what you're trying to style with the properties and the values, right? you define the styles you want to do. So take the selector, and then we define the declaration right beneath it, right, using our curly braces. So let's just note that. So let me just show you an example of how that works, and then we can just move to the next one. So I'm going to just clear this out. I don't want this to be here anymore, so we can see that properly. So I'm going to, inside of our head, like I mentioned, inside of the head, just come and do a style tag here, and do H1 color. I'm going to go with green this time, so that we see that it is changing. It is actually these styles that we're defining that is reflecting. So I'm going to do this. Come to my browser. Where is my browser? Okay, this is it. So I'm going to refresh it. As you can see, the color has actually changed to green. So that is our that's our internal CSS. It is a CSS that it is done within the file, right? It is done within that same file. That's why they call it internal. The inline is what is done on the same line. Internal is what is done within that same file, right? And it is styled using the style tag. And then the third one is actually the external CSS, and this is used by creating a file with an extension .css, right? You create a file, right, and then you can now write codes, your CSS codes inside that file, and then link the CSS file to our HTML file using this link tag that, as you can see. And make sure you use your link tag is always placed inside of the head section. So you use the link rel, which is the style sheet, and then the href, which is actually specifying the location where the file is, which is style.css. So this could be a directory or whatever, and how it is meant to be. So let me just go to my code extension or my code editor and actually write this code now. So let me just clear this out. I'm going to clear this out. Yeah. So presently I've created a file called style.css. So you can also just go ahead and do that same thing. Let me just delete this firstly, and then I'm going to create a new file so that we can start afresh. I'm going to create the style.css. So you also do that, and then once you've done this, you can now start writing your styles here. So let me just clear one more thing out. Alright, so once we've done this, let's start styling our file. So we have our H1 again. Note, we're no longer declaring any style tag or anything. We're just writing our style straight away because this is our style file. So we don't need to declare any of those things. So we can just write our H1 here, and can just do color is equals to yellow. Let's go with yellow this time. So you see that this thing is actually changing. So let me just go to my browser and then check it once more. Oops, what's that thing? So as you can see now, that style I've written is actually not working, and the reason why it is not working is because we have not linked it to our HTML file. Remember, they said you must link your CSS file to your HTML file using the link tag. For this file for those style links to actually reflect in your HTML file. So let's go to our HTML file and now define this. So we're going to be calling our link tag, which is the rel style sheet, and then we're going to be calling the name of the file. So I'm going to call style.css. Note, is it because of this style file is directly inside my folder? That's why I'm calling it like this. If that style file was inside a subdirectory, which is CSS, I might have to be doing CSS/style.css. So alright, now let's just move to the next one. That is how the external stylings work, and let's see that it actually reflects in our browser. So as you can see, it is actually reflecting now that I've done that. Alright, so now we have the CSS selector properties and value. So we're going to be looking at the different types of selector and how you can select elements in your HTML file. So we have the type selector, the class selector, the ID selector. We're not going to be looking at all of these things, but we're just touching around 4, close to 3 or 4 in this section. So the type selector, it is a way of targeting an element based on the element type. So what we'll be doing to all this one is actually the type selector, because what we're selecting is actually the element. If it's the paragraph, we're selecting P. If it's an H1, we're selecting H1, right? So that is the type selector. So, and that is generalizing. Let's say we have 7 H1 in our web page now, and I style H1, right? It reflects the style on all of those H1s. So this is what I mean by that. So let me just go to this place and just define another H1 here. I say this is a new H1 or something like that. Let me just use this for now, and then I just go to this place and write this. You can see that the color still remains yellow, right? So that is what I mean by that. So let's just come back to this place, right? That is type selector. And then we have the class selector, which is a way of grouping elements that are related with the same value and their class attributes together. So, and this class selector, we use this period symbol to actually target the value of a class. So let's say we're working with the class selector like this. So in order for us to work with the class selector, we need a class attribute in our HTML file like this, right? That's how I work with the class selector, and then just give it a name. Let's say my H1 like this. So if you want to target this particular selector in our CSS file, what we use is the period, which is the dot, and we'll call my H1. So when we just try to do color, just to let's go with purple. At least we're just changing colors to see that this is actually working. So let me go back to my browser and see that this is now changing to purple, because I'm selecting the class of that particular element. So that's the class selector. We have the ID selector, which is a way of targeting, is a way of giving you a unique style for every other element in the page. So when we are using the ID selector, it's a way of uniquely identifying a particular selector, and this ID selector can only be used on one selector at a time. You cannot use 2 of them at a time. That's why it's called an ID selector. So if we want to reference that particular selector in our CSS file, we use the hash symbol to do that. So let's say I define an ID selector. I say div ID container. But let me just use a paragraph instead. I think that'll be better. ID container like this, not even container, just me my new ID, right? So I'm going to be doing me. So like I said, it's used the hash to reference the ID selector in our CSS. So I'm doing hash me. I'm going to say color equals to pink. So we're moving colors again. We're not trying to stay on the same color. So we see that this thing is actually reflecting and working. Alright, so you can see this is it here, and the color is pink. I hope that makes sense. Alright, and then we have the universal selector, which is a way of targeting every single element on the page. So the universal selector, when you use that, is a way of targeting all the elements on your page, and it is done by just using the star. Right, so if I try to do universal selector, that means I try to target every single element on the page. You can say star. I can do background color of red like this. So when we go to our browser and check it, you can see everything. Everything is having a background color of red. Not just this element, but even the background, even the body of the page itself. So that is what they call the universal selector, and it is referenced using the star. So we have the CSS rules. So we have the specificity, we have the last rule, and then we have the important. So specificity basically means how well you specify a particular element on your CSS. So let's take, for example, you define an element H1, right? That is the first level. Then in that particular H1 has a class that bears a name, right? That is you're specifying that particular element now. So anytime you style your H1 tag, and you also style your class selector, is whatever you put in your class selector that will reflect. And this is actually an example based on what I just did now. Remember this, my H1 I just did, right? It's actually an H1, which is it's actually an H1. but now is the color that I specified to be purple that it is referencing on the website. If you take a look at it, because our H1 we define the color to be yellow, but instead now it's showing purple. That is what specificity means. So and the last rule also is also similar. So whatever style you define last for a particular element is what it shows on your browser. So if you define H1 of yellow and you also go down again, define another H1 of red, is whatever you define that shows as the elements there. So then we have the importance, so which overrules everything on top of it. When you define an element as important or a style as important, it overrules everything and shows regardless of wherever it is placed. So we have the units of measurement. I just want you to know this unit of measurement. We have the pixel, we have the rem, we have the em, and we have the percentage. These are units of measurement we'll be using in CSS, and most times I would advise that you go for rem or em because they're actually relative units of calculation. But oftentimes you see people using pixels and percentage because there are use cases where you can actually use them. So we have text styling. So we have the text transform. So text styling basically is how you style your text. Whether you want it to be an uppercase letter, you want it to be a lowercase letter, or whether you want it to be an italics, or you want it to be a straight line text, or you want it to even have spacing within it, or you want to have a vertical spacing. So that's how your text styling works. So we have different types of text styling. So let's just look at just a few to begin with. So now we'll define our class called my H1. Let me just define a text styling. So my class, I'm going to define something called like this, text transform, which is something we just saw. I can do uppercase. So that is text styling. And when we check it, we'll see this is actually an uppercase letter. So let me get rid of this background that is interrupting with my view. I'm going to get rid of this. So we have text transform. We have letter line height also. Line height, which is let's just give it. Line height is based on percentage. Oftentimes I use percentage, so you can use pixel or whatever unit of measurement. But oftentimes I use percentage. So let me just do 150% like this. So I want it to increase a certain amount of times. So you will not see it for now. You will not see the use of this line height. But when you use it more, when you are using it on text that has multiple lines of words, you will see how the line height works. But the one that can actually show presently is the letter spacing. So let me show you how letter spacing looks like. I'm going to do letter spacing. I'm going to do 5%, and you see that reflects immediately. Come in. Let me see. I think for me, if 5% is not too, let's go to 10 instead. I'm not sure why that isn't showing, but I guess we'll figure that out later on. So let me just move to the next part. So we have the lister tabs, which is used for styling text, list, another list, ordered list. On another list, we use the following values. We use the lower alpha, we use the upper alpha, we use the lower random, we use the upper random. So note this list style type, which when you're writing it in your CSS file, is separated by a dash, right? And then the values is going to be the upper alpha, lower alpha, upper Roman decimal. That will actually reflect when you try to use that for the ordered list. And for the unordered list, you use the following values: you use the none, you use the disk, you use the circles, and you use the squares. So for the font families, you have these font family properties allows you to specify the typeface that would be used for any text inside an element which CSS rules apply. So we have the font family, we have the font width, and we have the font size. So I want you guys to just read up on the font family, font width, and font size. It is not too difficult to define. Font family, this font family here just defines the kind of font you want your text to look like. If you want your text to look like Times New Roman, you want your text to look like Space Go Text, different fonts that you can think of. Font family takes care of that. And then we have the font width, which deals with the thickness of the font, whether it is bold, it is medium, it is regular, it is semi-bold. people that actually design will understand the terminologies I'm mentioning. But for those of us that don't understand, just think of it as the bold in your Word document, right? So that is the font weight, and then the font size just basically as the word depicts, it's just the size of the font, whether you want it to be 16 pixel, 20 pixel, 25 pixel. That is like the size, how big it is. That is the font size, right? So with that, we've come to the end of this particular section, and as an exercise, you could just try doing this as an exercise for yourself, just to practice, and just try as much as possible to accomplish this. And once you're able to do this, even not 100%, if you're able to do like 80% of this, you've definitely gotten something from this particular training. And thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I will see you in the next section.